It was a chilly Tuesday morning at the towering glass headquarters of Vantage Corp, the kind of place where the air itself felt expensive. Every employee wore their badge like armor, every visitor had to check in twice, and nothing, not even a paperclip, entered the building without approval. Security wasn't just a formality there. It was sacred. And Daniel Reed, the head security guard on the morning shift, took that responsibility like an oath. He'd been at Vantage Corp for 5 years, long enough to know every face that walked through those doors, from the interns clutching coffee trays to the board members who barely nodded in his direction. Daniel had seen panic drills, surprise inspections, and even a few attempted data leaks that were stopped because of his vigilance. His motto was simple: rules keep people safe. In his eyes, bending them was how things went wrong. That's what he told every new guard he trained. At exactly 8:30 a.m., as the rain started to drum harder against the marble steps outside, Daniel spotted a young man rushing toward the entrance. The boy looked barely 20 thin, soaked to the bone, with messy hair that dripped water down his cheeks. He wore a faded delivery jacket, the kind with reflective tape peeling off, and held a medium-sized cardboard box close to his chest. In bold black marker, across the top, one word was written: urgent. The boy approached the desk, breathing hard, his voice polite but trembling. "Sir, I have a delivery for the PR department. It's supposed to go directly to the communications manager." He pulled out a worn-out smartphone and opened a delivery app, the screen cracked but still glowing faintly with a task marked priority, signature required. Daniel glanced at the visitor list on his monitor. Nothing. No scheduled delivery, no appointment, no name even close to the one the boy gave. He had seen this before. People claiming to have urgent business, trying to slip in without clearance. Who authorized it? Daniel asked flatly. The boy hesitated, eyes flickering toward the elevator beyond the glass barrier. "They just told me to drop it off. Please, sir, it has to reach them by 9. It's important." His words came quick, nervous. Daniel's expression didn't soften. He'd heard that tone before, the desperate edge that came when someone was caught bluffing. "ID," he said. "Company clearance, driver license, something." The boy froze. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, not an ID, just an old receipt, and began searching his other pockets. His hands shook, and Daniel caught a glimpse of how cold they were. But rules were rules. Hesitation, in Daniel's world, was danger. He straightened, placing one hand on the desk, and said firmly, "I'm sorry, son. No clearance, no entry. You'll need to contact the PR department through the delivery hotline." The boy blinked, rainwater dripping from his hair onto the tiled floor. "Sir, please," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "It's not a normal package. It's really important." Daniel's jaw tightened. That's what everyone says before they try to sneak something past me. He motioned toward the small awning outside. "You can wait there while I check with the department, but you're not coming in until I get confirmation." The boy nodded slowly, defeated, and stepped back into the cold. He stood under the narrow shelter, clutching the box as if it were something fragile, something personal. Daniel tried not to look, but every time he did, the sight gnawed at him. The young man's soaked clothes, the quiet way he kept wiping water from the box to protect it from the rain. Inside, employees streamed through the security gates, flashing their badges without a glance toward the boy outside. Most didn't even notice him. A few did, and looked away, pretending they hadn't. After a few minutes, Daniel picked up his radio. "Dispatch, this is Reed. I've got an unregistered delivery for PR. Sender's name, Leo Turner. Claims it's urgent. Any confirmation on your end?" Static. Then a bored voice replied, "Negative. No record of that delivery." Daniel sighed. "Copy that." He leaned back in his chair, eyes still on the boy outside. "He's not listed," he called through the intercom, his voice carrying through the glass. "You'll have to reschedule." Leo, that was the name he'd given, looked down, then back up with quiet frustration. "Sir, I don't have time. I promised it would reach before 9. Please, if you could just—" Daniel cut him off. "If I make exceptions for one person, I have to make them for everyone. You think I can run this place on trust? The boy opened his mouth, then closed it again. His shoulders slumped. For a moment, Daniel felt something tug in his chest. Guilt, maybe, but he forced it down. The last time he'd trusted someone's urgent story, it had nearly cost him his job. He turned back to his monitor, trying to ignore the shadow of the boy still standing in the rain. Minutes passed. The clock ticked toward 9. Daniel thought he saw the boy check his phone, then glance nervously at the street, as if waiting for someone. His fingers tightened around the box like it carried more than just paper, like it carried meaning. Something in Daniel's gut twisted. He told himself it was nonsense. His instincts were about threats, not pity. And yet, the image of the young man, drenched, shaking, pleading, refused to leave his mind. He had no idea that inside that rain-soaked box wasn't a scam or a trap, but something that would shake the company's reputation before the day was over. Something real. Something that mattered. But for now, Daniel stood by the rulebook, unaware that in less than 30 minutes, news vans would pull up to those same steps, and the cameras would capture him, the loyal guard, refusing entry to the one person who'd come to deliver the truth. He straightened his badge, exhaled, and muttered to himself, "Just doing my job." What he didn't know was that by the end of the day, everyone in that building, from the CEO to the janitor, would remember that one morning when a soaked young man with an urgent box tried to get in, and the security guard who stopped him would become part of a story that went far beyond rules, routine, or rain. The boy's shoulders slumped, his thin frame trembling under the weight of both exhaustion and rain. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Eyes red, lips pale, clothes clinging to his skin from the downpour. His voice cracked as he spoke, barely audible over the rain hammering against the glass doors. "Sir, please," he whispered, desperation threading through every syllable. "It's for the CEO. It has to be there by 9. Daniel crossed his arms tightly, his uniform crisp, his expression unmoved. "If it was that important, it would have been logged in the system," he replied, his tone even but firm. He'd heard every excuse imaginable. "It's urgent. I forgot my ID, someone told me to bring this," and 9 times out of 10, it was nothing but a distraction. Behind him, employees streamed through the checkpoint, flashing their badges across the scanner without so much as a glance at the soaked young man standing outside. To them, this was background noise, just another part of the morning routine. No one stopped to ask, "What's in the box?" The rain intensified, the kind that blurred reflections on the marble floor and filled the air with that metallic smell of wet concrete. The boy's sneakers squelched with every step, soaked through completely. His fingers trembled as he adjusted his grip on the box, the cardboard edges darkened by rain but still held close to his chest, as if whatever was inside couldn't get wet, couldn't be dropped, couldn't be lost. "Step aside, son," Daniel said finally, his patience thinning. "You're blocking the door." The boy obeyed silently, moving to stand beneath the narrow overhang that offered little protection from the storm. His head was down, his hair plastered to his forehead, but his eyes darted between the security desk and the elevator beyond the glass. Each time someone walked past, he seemed to flinch, like he was waiting for someone specific. Minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. Daniel kept glancing toward him between ID scans, each time finding him still there, clutching the same box, shivering. The sight was beginning to gnaw at him, though he refused to show it. Finally, he grabbed his radio and pressed the button. "Control, this is Reed at the East Lobby. I've got an unscheduled delivery here. Young male, early 20s, says it's for the CEO. Package marked, urgent. Can we get a verification check?" A burst of static came through, followed by a tired voice. "Copy that, Daniel. Give me a few minutes." Probably another scam courier trying to drop phishing devices again. Daniel exhaled sharply and muttered, half to himself, half into the mic, "Yeah, that's what I figured." Still, his eyes lingered on the boy. There was something about him, not just nervousness, but a kind of restrained panic, as if he was caught between wanting to leave and needing to stay. Every few seconds, he'd pull out his phone, check the screen, then quickly tuck it away again, glancing at the street like he was waiting for someone who was late. "You expecting someone?" Daniel asked, his voice carrying through the drizzle as he opened the door slightly. The boy froze, caught off guard by the question. He hesitated, then nodded once, a small, uncertain movement. "Yeah," he said quietly, eyes still fixed on the road. "They were supposed to be here already." "Who?" Daniel pressed. The boy hesitated again, then murmured, "You'll see." Daniel frowned. Cryptic answers were never good. He scanned the street outside, just passing cars, puddles, and people hurrying under umbrellas. Nothing unusual. Still, something about the kid's tone unsettled him. He'd been trained to read body language, nervous tics, eye movements, posture shifts, and this boy wasn't acting like someone caught in a lie. He was acting like someone under pressure. "Look," Daniel said, softening just slightly. "If it's really for the CEO, and if it's that important, I'll make a note for my supervisor. But until I get clearance, that box doesn't go in." The boy nodded faintly, but his grip on the box only tightened. The cardboard looked ready to give out from the rain, yet he held it like it was made of glass. Another 10 minutes crawled by. The rain wasn't letting up. Daniel could hear it drumming on the roof, the steady rhythm filling the silence between beeps of the badge scanner. Every now and then, someone would glance toward the boy, some with mild curiosity, others with annoyance, but no one said a word. At one point, a woman from HR passed through and whispered to Daniel, "He's still out there? Poor kid. Maybe let him drop it off in the lobby." Daniel shook his head. "Can't do that. Policy's clear, no entry without confirmation." She sighed, muttered something under her breath, and walked off. By 8:55, Daniel's radio crackled again. "Read, control here." Still no record of any authorized delivery for the CEO or PR department. "Probably nothing. You can turn him away." Daniel pressed the talk button. "Copy that." He turned to the boy and said firmly, "I checked with the system. There's no record of your delivery. You'll need to return it to sender." The boy didn't move. He just looked up at Daniel with eyes that seemed to plead without words. "Sir," he said quietly, "I can't do that. If I don't deliver this, it'll be too late." "Too late for what?" Daniel asked, frowning. But the boy didn't answer. He just shook his head slightly, looking past Daniel, not at him, but through him, as though his mind was somewhere else entirely. Daniel tried to push down the unease building in his chest. He'd seen plenty of nervous couriers before, but this wasn't nerves. This was something deeper, fear mixed with guilt, like the boy was carrying something far heavier than a package. He glanced at the security cameras, then back at the street. The rain was now coming down in thick sheets, making it hard to see. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, faint but growing louder. The boy looked up suddenly, eyes wide. "They're here," he whispered. Daniel followed his gaze. Down the road, a white van skidded to a stop. Not a company van, not a delivery truck, but a news van, the kind with a satellite dish on top and the station's logo painted across the side. The side door slid open, and a cameraman jumped out, followed by a woman holding a microphone, rushing toward the building. Daniel's heart skipped. "What the hell?" he muttered. The boy stepped forward, clutching the box tighter. "I told you it was important," he said softly, almost apologetically. As the news crew neared, the cameras already rolling, Daniel felt the shift, that invisible tension when something ordinary turns into something big. In that single moment, the rules, the rain, the routine, everything he'd relied on, began to feel suddenly, terrifyingly irrelevant. At 9:02 a.m., the morning calm shattered. A black van screeched to a halt just outside Vantage Corp's glass gates, tires slicing through puddles left by the relentless rain. Daniel straightened instinctively, one hand going to his security badge. The side door of the van slid open, and a group of people spilled out. Cameras hoisted on shoulders, microphones clutched in gloved hands, raincoats flapping as they hurried toward the lobby entrance. For a second, Daniel didn't process what he was seeing. Then his eyes locked on the bold white letters printed across the van side. City Watch News. Reporters. They weren't the kind of visitors he saw every day. Vantage Corp was a fortress of privacy. Press access required weeks of clearance, legal agreements, and public relations oversight. And yet, Here they were, running through the storm, shouting over each other as a woman in a navy raincoat called out, "We're live in 5. Get the feed ready." Daniel's earpiece crackled suddenly. "Reed, what's going on down there?" His supervisor barked, voice tense and confused. "Why do I see a news van at the east entrance?" Daniel turned toward the security monitors just inside the booth. The cameras were already recording the chaos, reporters swarming near the front doors, the delivery boy standing frozen, and Daniel himself caught in the middle of something spiraling far beyond his control. I don't know yet," Daniel said into his mic, eyes narrowing as the reporters closed in. "They're from City Watch. I'm trying to contain it." But he couldn't. The moment one of the cameras spotted the delivery boy, the group moved in like a tide. The lead reporter, a woman in her mid-30s with sharp eyes and a press badge clipped to her jacket, stepped right up to him. Her voice carried the kind of practiced authority that came from years of breaking headlines. "Are you the one delivering the petition?" she asked quickly, holding out a microphone marked with the City Watch logo. The boy blinked, startled by the sudden attention. He hesitated for a moment, glancing nervously at Daniel, then nodded slowly. "Why, yes, ma'am," he said, his voice trembling but clear. "I just wanted to make sure it reached the CEO." Daniel frowned deeply. Petition. That word didn't fit. What petition? He'd checked the logs. There was nothing about a petition. There was nothing scheduled for the CEO at all. Before he could ask, the reporter turned toward the camera, her tone shifting into that polished rhythm used for live broadcasts. "We're here at Vantage Corp headquarters," she began, "where a delivery boy, the younger brother of a former intern, has been trying for hours to deliver a sealed letter addressed to the company's CEO. Daniel's pulse quickened. People in the lobby were starting to slow down, drawn to the commotion like moths to a flame. A few employees gathered near the glass doors, whispering, trying to peek through the rain-streaked windows. The reporter continued, her words sharp and deliberate. According to sources, the letter contains a petition demanding justice and accountability for last week's warehouse accident, an incident that left 2 workers critically injured and 1 dead. The delivery boy claims the letter exposes unsafe working conditions that were ignored by company management. A murmur rippled through the small crowd that had formed just outside the checkpoint. Someone gasped audibly. Another employee, a man from accounting, turned pale and muttered, "Is she talking about the plant in Westline?" Daniel's stomach sank. He had heard something about that, a brief memo that circulated internally, mentioning an equipment malfunction at one of Vantage Corp's warehouses. But it was written off as contained, under investigation, and not for public discussion. He'd never imagined it might have been more serious than that. The reporter angled her mic toward the delivery boy again. "What's your name, son?" He hesitated, looking overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight. "Liam," he said softly. "Liam Carter. And your sister?" Liam swallowed hard. "Her name was Emma Carter," he replied. "She was working at the Westline warehouse the day it happened." His voice trembled now, but he pushed through. "She sent an email to management a week before, warning that the storage racks were unstable. They never fixed them. The night of the accident, they collapsed." A sharp intake of breath came from someone standing behind Daniel. He turned. A few employees had pressed their hands to their mouths, shock written across their faces. One whispered, "Oh my God!" Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him, metaphorically speaking. The box. The urgency. The rain-soaked desperation. It all clicked together in an instant, and the realization hit him like a gut punch. This wasn't a scam. The urgent package he'd been blocking for nearly an hour wasn't a threat to security. It was a plea for justice. He stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Hey," he said, his tone suddenly unsure. "Listen, I didn't know." But the cameras were already rolling. The reporter barely glanced at him. "Sir, are you security?" she asked quickly, shifting the microphone toward his face. "Yes," Daniel said, caught off guard. "I was just following protocol. There was no scheduled." The reporter cut him off smoothly. "So you refused entry to a man carrying evidence related to the company's recent workplace tragedy?" Daniel froze. The question hung heavy in the air, slicing through the rain like glass. Around him, whispers grew louder. People were recording on their phones now. The story was spreading in real time. "Ma'am, I didn't know what he was carrying," Daniel said finally, voice tight. "We have procedures." "Of course," the reporter said briskly, her tone clipped but professional. "And now that the situation's clear, will you allow him through?" Daniel looked toward the boy, Liam, he reminded himself, and saw tears mixing with raindrops on his face. The box in his hands was soaked through, but he still held it close, protecting it as if it were sacred. Something in Daniel shifted. For 5 years, he'd followed every rule without question, believing structure was what kept people safe. But now, he realized, sometimes rules didn't protect. Sometimes they silenced. He took a slow breath, then nodded. "Yeah," he said quietly, stepping aside. "He can go in." Liam blinked in disbelief, clutching the box tighter as he stepped past the glass doors. The cameras followed his every move, capturing the moment a soaked, trembling young man walked into one of the most powerful corporations in the city. Not as an employee, not as a messenger, but as a brother fighting to be heard. Daniel watched him go, rain still dripping from his uniform cap. His radio buzzed again, his supervisor demanding an update, but he didn't answer. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't know what to say. Behind him, the reporter's voice carried into the air, steady and clear. "Sometimes," she said, facing the camera, "it takes one person's persistence, and one guard's hesitation, to bring the truth to the doorsteps of power." And as the broadcast cut to live footage of Liam walking through the marble lobby, Daniel finally understood. The boy he stopped wasn't just delivering a package. He was delivering a reckoning. The live broadcast caught everything. Daniel's navy blue uniform, the glint of his security badge, the rainwater glistening on his shoulders, all frozen in the harsh glare of live TV. The camera zoomed in on his face just as realization struck. That box he had refused moments earlier wasn't suspicious cargo. It was truth, sealed and shivering in the hands of a delivery boy barely out of his teens. Reporters swarmed like a tide around the boy, microphones thrust forward, questions overlapping in a chaotic chorus. "What's in the box? Who sent you? What are you trying to show the company?" Their voices echoed through the marble lobby, a mixture of curiosity and tension that made Daniel's pulse throb in his ears. The boy, Liam, as Daniel had overheard, looked overwhelmed, his soaked hair plastered to his forehead, his sneakers leaving faint muddy prints on the spotless white floor. One of the reporters, a woman in a raincoat with a City Watch badge, gently guided him closer to the camera. "Take your time," she said softly, her microphone steady but her tone compassionate. "Just tell us what happened." Liam swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around the box as though it might disappear if he let go. His voice trembled when he finally spoke. "My sister. She worked at the Vantage Corp distribution center," he began. "She was just an intern, but she worked harder than anyone. She believed this company cared about safety." His eyes flicked briefly toward Daniel, not in anger, but in quiet exhaustion. A few weeks ago, during a machinery test, the safety alarms didn't go off. A mechanical arm malfunctioned and hit her. She's been in the hospital ever since. The crowd around them fell silent. Even the clicking of cameras slowed. Daniel's throat tightened. He remembered seeing a brief mention of an equipment incident in a company-wide memo, phrased carefully as a minor operational delay. It hadn't seemed important at the time, just another line in a corporate update. But now, hearing it from Liam, with rain still dripping from his lashes and grief wrapped around every word, the truth hit with the force of a blow. "She warned them," Liam continued, his voice growing stronger. "She sent reports, pictures, everything. But they ignored her. Said the alarms would be fixed next quarter, after the audits." His hands trembled as he lifted the lid of the box. Inside, neatly stacked despite the rain, were papers, printed emails, photos of rusted wiring, handwritten notes. The camera zoomed in, catching glimpses of timestamps, signatures, and a Vantage Corp logo on internal memos. "She told me if anything ever happened," he said quietly, "I should make sure this reached someone who'd listen." Daniel's breath caught. The entire time he'd been blocking that door, demanding IDs and delivery logs, he hadn't realized that the boy in front of him wasn't breaking a rule. He was upholding something far more sacred: accountability. Every instinct Daniel had relied on as a guard, caution, control, procedure, suddenly felt hollow. He wasn't protecting anyone. He was preventing the truth from entering. Inside his earpiece, static crackled before his supervisor's voice cut through, low and tense. "Reed, what's happening down there? I'm seeing live footage on Channel 9. Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. Across the lobby, employees were emerging from elevators and cubicles, drawn to the commotion. Some whispered to each other, faces pale as they realized what was being exposed in real time. The words "unsafe," ignored warnings, and "injured" in turn echoed through the marble hall like gunfire. Then came the sound of hurried footsteps, sharp, staccato clicks against the floor. The PR director, Ms. Latham, appeared from the hallway, her tailored suit immaculate despite the chaos. Her expression, however, betrayed panic. "What in God's name is going on?" she hissed, eyes darting between the reporters, the boy, and Daniel. "Ma'am," Daniel started, but she raised a hand sharply. "I don't need your report, Mr. Reed," she said, her voice cold but cracking at the edges. She caught sight of the City Watch cameras. "Just let them through." Her command was swift, desperate. For a split second, Daniel hesitated. 5 years of training screamed against the idea of breaking protocol. But then he met Liam's eyes, red-rimmed and weary, and understood. Some rules were meant to protect people. Others were meant to protect power. He nodded, stepping aside wordlessly. The reporters and Liam moved forward, their shoes squeaking against the polished floor, camera lights reflecting in the glass walls. The automatic doors opened with a quiet hiss, almost ceremonial. Daniel watched as they crossed the lobby, a small procession of truth entering a place built on polished secrecy. Behind him, Ms. Latham barked orders into her phone, calling upstairs. "Get PR down here now. And find the CEO, before this hits every network in the city." Her voice rose and then faltered as she turned toward the camera and realized it was already too late. The broadcast was live. Daniel glanced up at the nearest screen mounted on the wall. The feed from City Watch showed everything in sharp detail. The soaked delivery boy, the sealed box, the security guard who had stopped him, and now the company's PR director standing frozen in front of flashing microphones. A caption scrolled along the bottom. "Breaking. Vantage Corp employee's family alleges cover-up in warehouse accident." The headline hit Daniel like ice. His radio buzzed again, other guards asking for direction, chaos building upstairs, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He could still see the boy's face, the quiet dignity beneath the fear. He came here alone, Daniel thought, carrying evidence the company wanted buried. And I almost stopped him. The camera panned briefly to Daniel again as he stood near the entrance, rain dripping from his uniform cap. The look on his face, a mix of guilt, disbelief, and awakening, said more than any statement could. Viewers across the city would see that expression and wonder, how many doors had been shut on people like Liam? A hush fell over the lobby as the CEO's assistant appeared from the far end, nearly sprinting to the elevators. Her phone was pressed to her ear, her voice urgent. "Get the boardroom ready. Now. We have a situation." And there it was, the ripple effect. One act of silence exposed. One moment of truth unleashed. The security system Daniel had trusted so completely, the protocols he'd followed without hesitation, suddenly felt like a cage. Not one that protected the company from danger, but one that trapped the truth outside. As Liam and the reporters disappeared into the elevator, Daniel exhaled slowly. His reflection in the glass door stared back at him, the uniform, the badge, the rules he'd lived by. But something had changed. For the first time, he realized that security wasn't just about guarding walls. Sometimes it was about opening doors. And in that moment, as the elevator doors closed behind the boy carrying justice in a soaked cardboard box, Daniel knew. This was the day everything inside Vantage Corp began to crack. By noon, the story had spread like wildfire. News tickers across every major channel pulsed with the same headline. Delivery boy exposes corporate negligence, security guard tried to stop him at gate. Within hours, Vantage Corp's name was everywhere. On TV screens, social media threads, and breaking news alerts that interrupted regular programming. The company's sleek logo, once a symbol of innovation and prestige, was now a banner of controversy. Outside its gleaming glass headquarters, a crowd had already begun to gather. Reporters, activists, and employees who didn't want to be seen but couldn't stay away either. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried the heaviness of something irreversible. Inside the building, chaos reigned. Executives flooded into conference rooms, faces pale, ties loosened, and voices sharp with panic. The PR team scrambled to rewrite press statements, every sentence torn apart and reassembled to sound less guilty. Legal advisors hovered near the elevators, clutching folders marked confidential. Some employees whispered in corners, others pretended to work, their screens reflecting the same headline over and over. The illusion of control, once as polished as the company's marble floors, was shattering in real time. And in the middle of it all, Daniel sat alone in the dim glow of the security booth, his reflection flickering on the black glass of the CCTV monitors. The morning played on an endless loop in his mind, the boy's trembling voice, the box clutched to his chest, the cameras, the chaos, and that one crucial moment when Daniel had stopped him at the gate. Not because he wanted to, but because it was protocol. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring blankly at the row of screens showing different angles of the lobby. A mop bucket left near the entrance. A stack of umbrellas dripping near reception. Employees moving briskly, avoiding each other's eyes. The building looked the same as always, yet everything about it felt different. Exposed, fragile. The polished perfection now seemed like a lie. The intercom buzzed with muffled chatter, snippets of executives trying to control the narrative. Someone mentioned damage control. Someone else mentioned firing the responsible personnel. Daniel's stomach tightened. He knew who they meant. He'd already been called the guard in the headlines, a nameless symbol of misplaced authority. He could hear the anchor's voices in his head, repeating the phrase again and again. A guard tried to stop him at the gate. That evening, the rain started again, soft at first, then steady. Daniel stayed past his shift, unsure if he even wanted to go home. He turned on the small TV in the corner of the guardroom, the one that usually played quiet background news. Now it showed his own workplace, the same lobby, the same box, the same boy. The broadcast replayed the footage slowly, dramatically. Liam, drenched, trembling, but resolute, holding the box as he spoke into the microphone. Some people have power, he said, his voice raw but unwavering. Others have truth. I just wanted someone to listen. The words hit Daniel harder the second time. He stared at the screen as though it might offer him forgiveness. In that moment, he wasn't a guard or an employee. He was just a man realizing how easily good intentions could turn into silent complicity. His whole career had been built on the idea of following orders, of keeping things running smoothly, of making sure nothing unauthorized got in. But maybe that's exactly what the system wanted. People like him to guard the wrong things. He barely slept that night. The rain outside the window whispered against the glass, the same rhythm that had filled the morning air. When dawn broke, he found himself back at his post earlier than usual. He didn't expect to see Liam again, but fate, it seemed, wasn't done teaching him. Around mid-morning, the elevator doors slid open, and there he was. The same boy, wearing a clean shirt this time but carrying the same quiet determination in his eyes. There were no cameras, no reporters, just two people meeting in the calm after a storm. Daniel stood up immediately, uncertain of what to say. His throat felt dry. He finally walked over, holding a paper cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm from his nervous waiting. I should have listened, Daniel said quietly, extending the cup toward him. Liam hesitated for a moment, then smiled faintly, not with triumph, but with understanding. You did what you thought was right, he said. Sometimes, that's all any of us can do until we see the bigger picture. Daniel nodded slowly, the words sinking in like rain into dry ground. For a long moment, they stood in silence, two ordinary people caught in the web of something much larger than themselves. Then Liam looked toward the lobby where everything had changed. They're actually making changes, he said softly. Safety audits, new equipment, real accountability. My sister's still recovering, but at least now it means something. Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. He didn't have words for what he felt. Guilt, relief, respect, maybe all of it mixed together. "She's lucky to have you," he finally said. Liam shook his head. "No," he said simply. "We're lucky someone finally saw." In the weeks that followed, Vantage Corp's leadership tried to rebuild its image. The CEO appeared on national television, issuing a formal apology to employees and the public. A special task force was announced, promising transparency and new safety regulations across all facilities. Shareholders demanded accountability, and workers began speaking up about other issues long ignored. For once, the story had done more than just make headlines. It had changed something. But for Daniel, the real transformation happened quietly, inside him. He went back to work every day, stood by the same gates, scanned the same badges. But now, each face he saw reminded him of that morning. He listened more carefully, noticed more, questioned more. When a janitor once mentioned a broken emergency light, Daniel didn't just log it, he made sure it was fixed. It wasn't about redemption, not really. It was about learning that doing your job wasn't the same as doing what was right. Weeks later, as he stood outside during a night shift, the city lights flickering in the distance, Daniel thought about the phrase Liam had said, "Some people have power. Others have truth." Maybe, he realized, truth was its own kind of power, the kind that didn't need permission to enter. The headlines eventually faded. New scandals replaced old ones. The world moved on. But in that building, and in one guard's conscience, something permanent had changed. Daniel no longer saw his post as a gate to protect. He saw it as a threshold to guard honestly. Because sometimes, protecting a place doesn't mean keeping everyone out. It means having the courage to let the right person in, even when the rules say not to.